Years ago, my second grandson, Duncan, was brain injured at birth. And we did not realize it at the time, but they say he had a stroke at birth. He bled out into his brain, and at 3 weeks, the blood pools in his brain became infected. He went into Cook's Children's Hospital in Fort Worth, and they told us he could not survive. He did survive, but in fact, of course, he was profoundly impacted. At 18 months of age, he could only pull himself along the floor with his right arm. He couldn't turn over, he couldn't sit up. The rest of his motion was not something he could understand. Very responsive, very bright, smile, you know, look at us. He could call out things like, yeah, you. And it's like, what? If you stand further away, you realize, where are you? He would want to know where we were. If we were out of sight, he couldn't come get us. So you and I met through, I think, a path of miracle. But at Landmark Forum, we were sitting side by side, and you said what you did, that you were able to Rolf brain-injured children, that you were trained by Dr. Ida Rolf herself. And I said, turns out I have a brain-injured grandson. And I remember we did that exercise that you choose, and to choose something that was very, very difficult for you, that you've been resisting and making a whole struggle over. And I may get moved again as I tell you about this, even though it's been like 17 years. But I turned to you, and looking in your eyes as you watched me very compassionately, I said, I choose that my baby grandson Duncan has cerebral palsy. And then you gave me your card, and we were able to make an appointment. And the first time that you did the initial Rolfing session with Duncan, at the end of the session, when we put him on the floor as usual and we were getting our stuff together, you know how that is, he rolled over. He'd never been able to roll over in his life. And so we did all the 10 sessions. My daughter was Rolfed, I was, my husband was. It's made a difference for all of us in how we move. But more than that, Duncan now dances, plays soccer, runs, has a slight limp when he walks, no limp when he runs. He's graduating high school. He's making straight A's. He speaks 3 languages. He's teaching the other kids math. And he's visiting colleges because he wants to be a counselor for high school kids. He said, because a lot of kids have it way tougher than I ever did.
That's great. Now tell me the part about the institutes.
So you introduced us to the institutes. And my daughter at that time was living in Texas when we first, she'd been visiting how all this happened. So she moved to our house in Delaware from Texas so that we could just be closer to the institutes. Although they help you worldwide, to be just an hour and a half south of them was obviously the answer. So we went to the institutes. We did first the Well Baby program because they didn't have any openings for the injured babies. And we started doing everything we could think of for Duncan at that point, and his older brother. And then we went to the brain injured child program and participated with that until Duncan was graduated to life. We worked on him for 20 months, 12 hours a day. And we had teams of volunteers coming in from the local churches in Delaware to help us with that. And he's one of the very fine success stories. And without having met you, he would be in a wheelchair.
Somebody wants to know more about Rolfing, they should call my office at 610-666-1795 or send us an email at teamchildren@gmail.com.